What story do you love telling? One time in 10th grade I fell asleep in first period and woke up when 5th period was almost over. Nobody woke me up between classes. Nobody told me to get out of their seat. No teacher asked where I was. The teacher in my first period didn't even wake me up. You probably look like you needed the sleep. This has happened to me, too. Once when I was in first grade and another time when I was a high school senior, where I'm from. It's the teachers who transfer classes while the students stay put in their assigned rooms. Teacher after teacher came. Nobody woke me up. Both times, I was sick and had taken medicine that made me drowsy. As a small child, I decided to make Santa Claus a large paper candy cane as a way to say thanks, because my family was poor, and I didn't have the money to buy him anything. Woke up Christmas morning and it was gone. Replaced by a real candy cane that must have been 1.5 feet tall. It was that event that cemented the idea that the holidays were indeed magical, and I held on to that way into my teens. My mom always went to bed way before my sister and I did, and if we happened to be upstairs in our rooms she would just yell "Good night, I love you" before she went to bed. Anyway, one night she yells, "Good night, me, I love you. Good night, sister, I like you." Wait, no, she didn't mean it. She was just very tired, and it was the best night of my goddamn life. I worked front desk at a hotel a while back. I see a mom and son walking up to the desk, screaming at each other. I take a deep breath as I see them heading in my direction, knowing that I am about to have a very pleasant interaction. The mom then proceeds to explain to me that while she was in the shower and her son was in the bedroom, a burglar climbed in their window, took all of the living room furniture, an armchair, an end table, and a coffee table, and threw them off the balcony. Mind you, they were on the 3rd floor, and the layout of the hotel was impossible to climb. Had this been true, the son, who looked about 10, appeared like he was going to crap himself out of fear. Now, considering the flaws in the son's fib, not to mention the fact that he was quite large and the furniture was not heavy, I assumed the mom knew it was actually her son, and the burglar didn't exist. I thought she was trying to teach him a lesson by taking him up front to see if he would confess. The son was still adamant about the burglar fairy tale, and the mom asked to see security footage. I'm trying not to pee myself as I'm in the back explaining the situation to security, and they end up finding the footage. I sat with the mom and child as the footage played, and you'll never guess who threw the furniture off the balcony. The mom looked absolutely flabbergasted that her son would do such a thing. And that's when it finally hit me that she believed it was a burglar after all. Now I've seen lots of stupid people before, but this lady had really outdone herself. When security and I informed her that she would be charged for the damage to the furniture, she flipped out. She kept trying to convince us that it actually wasn't her son in the footage, and that the camera wasn't clear enough. She tried to blame us for scamming her, and tried to refuse to pay it. She didn't have a leg to stand on, though. Some people really are too stupid to be parents. I wonder why that sucker would just throw crap out the window like that. I was around 3, a cute blonde little girl who looked like an angel, according to my mother. My father had just grounded me on something and sent me to my room. 5 minutes later I show up in the living room, my fists clenched, my face stern and angry. My father screams, "Didn't I just send you to your room?" I don't even reply. Just stand there, angry. "Don't make me go over there. Go to your room." Nothing. Just standing there. When my father starts moving in my direction, I turn around, put my panties down and fart. Turns out my face wasn't angry. I was just concentrating on getting the fart out. My father laughed so much I got rid of punishment. As a father, I hope something this amazing happens to me one day. One time my dad made me a really crap cup of tea. I didn't want to be rude, so when he left the room I poured it out the window and accidentally hit the guy who lived downstairs. Not my proudest moment, but in a lot of ways it was. I read this as my dad made me crap a cup of tea and I didn't catch until the 4th read through. It was very confusing. I am so tired. I wasn't there when it happened, but it brings me tears of happiness every time. My best friend and her, now ex-boyfriend, were at the zoo when someone dropped their sunglasses into the gorilla habitat. The zookeepers have trained them to throw back items people drop. So the keeper tells everyone to step back because the gorilla has a strong arm. My lovely, wonderful friend didn't hear and instead moved closer as everyone moved back, and she got hit in the face with a big butt stick the gorilla threw instead. She had a big mark on her face and was trying really hard not to cry while her boyfriend was struggling not to laugh. I wish I had been there. I love her so much, but I can't help but laugh every time I think of this story, lol. Training animals to throw stuff back at people seems like a terrible idea, lmao. People seem to like the story of how my boyfriend, now of 3 years and I met, grew up in the same small town, went to separate schools, private versus public, but he dated someone from my high school. She was in similar dance and drama classes as me, and we all went to the same high school football games, plays, and events. We joke I may have sat next to or near him at any of those extracurricular activities. We never once met. We went to the same college and had the same groups of friends to the separation of about 2 degrees. People who have seen us together in the last 3 years are awestruck they never thought to introduce us to each other. We never once met. We worked in the same shopping center in the summer intervals between college years. Him, at the Harris Teeter, me, at the restaurant next door. I was a waitress who used to run into the teat when I needed lunch or we were out of bread. He was a produce boy. We never once met. I went through a find yourself phase after college and ended up finally moving back home 3 years later and in with one of my good college friends. He was going out one night and said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to meet my friend Mike at a bar. Wanna join?" We get out of the car and, of all things, tell the same SpongeBob joke at the same time. We look at each other and smile. We play a feisty game of foosball and the rest is, as they say, history. And that's the moment when the parallel lines of life we'd been dancing around finally crossed and we looked at each other and went, "Oh hey, there you are." His parents currently live down the road from my sister because of course they do. My old roommates have asked me multiple times where he's been all this time, and we always joke, waiting until the absolutely right moment. TL. Doctor, serendipity is a heck of a thing. Could have met boyfriend numerous times throughout life. Met him at probably the best time. My friend has an older uncle who loves pee. So, when he was younger, being before computers were common, he had to buy magazines. I'm talking enough stacks to fill up a decent sized closet about 1/3. One day, he decides he doesn't need his collection of mildly used pee mags. Being the gentleman he is, he offers it all to my 16-year-old buddy. Now you're probably thinking, what the heck can you even do with that much pee? Particularly because, even in 2010, there was a good amount of free pee on the interwebs. As he is not one to be wasteful, he gets together with a bunch of friends and decides on a plan of action. On a crisp fall morning, I'm woken up early before school by my dad, who is an old school Christian. We're talking 3 services a week. No TV, because the devil and media like Harry Potter books were prohibited. He walks me outside and says, "What the heck is wrong with your friends?" My bolted together 1995 Saturn SL2 that I got for $300 is entirely saran wrapped multiple times, covered in old, crusty Playboy magazines featuring centerfolds with 80s bushes. I've never since experienced the raw emotional confusion of feeling the color drain from my face and nearly crapping my pants while struggling to hold back my laughter. Whoa, I wouldn't even be mad. That's funny as frick. I know I'm pretty late to the party, but I'd like to throw this one into the hat. Back in the 90s, I moved to Colorado to split the rent with my sister and brother-in-law. It was right before Christmas. They were struggling to pay the bills, and I didn't have any money either, so it was looking pretty grim for Christmas morning. You'd have to know my sister to realize that even though she was well into her 20s, her enthusiasm for the Christmas season made everything beautiful. When we couldn't afford to buy even one present for each other, and she went to bed with the most depressed and saddest face I'd ever seen on her, there was no way I could let her wake up to no presents under the tree. So I went on the hunt for change. I dug through the couch cushions, looked for loose change by the washing machine, even went out to the cars and looked under the seats. I was able to scrounge together 75 cents. It certainly wasn't much, but at 2 in the morning, I walked half a mile in the Colorado snow to the all-night convenience store. I walked around looking at the candy thinking that if nothing else, we could split something, but they were all at least $1. Then I turned the aisle and saw them. Nutty Bar cookies. 2 in a pack 25 cents each. I snatched them up, talked the cashier into waiving the 4 cents tax, and headed home. When I got back, since there was no wrapping paper, I wrapped them all in old newspaper and put them under the tree and then went to bed. The next morning, you would have thought I bought her a new car. Just the sight of something under the tree turned her worst Christmas ever into the best. And that's how the crunchy, chocolatey goodness of 25-cent nutty bars saved Christmas. This is so sweet and really shows a Christmas spirit. I've told this before and people seem to like it. When I was a kid we didn't have a lot of money, so we often shopped at thrift stores. What I loved about that was that you could get 10 books for $1, so I would plant myself in front of the book section and make piles of which one I wanted to get and then decided after I'd gone through them all. One day an older lady saw me sitting with my piles and asked if I liked to read. I told her I did and showed her a few of the books I found that I liked. She smiled and then pulled $1 out of her purse, handed it to me and said, "Promise me that you'll keep reading." I was so happy and immediately stood up and said that I would. She smiled and walked away and I went back to my piles able to pick out an extra 10 books to take home. It was just a small act of kindness for her, but for me having a random stranger encourage my love of reading and making me promise to never stop definitely had a lot to do with my continued love of reading. This was probably over 20 years ago, but I still think of her whenever I buy a new book. This was very wholesome and I'm glad there wasn't some terrible twist at the end. About the time I made my friend's phone wallpaper gapey when he took it into the Sprint store. There's a standing policy at work that says if you leave your phone unlocked and unattended someone will probably mess with it. Well, this time my friend did and I changed his wallpaper to a very graphic homosexual image. Specifically a large black man going to town on a smaller white man. Remember this? So he sees the picture, ha ha ha, very funny, and changes it back. Now fast forward 6 months to a year and he takes his phone to the Sprint store for some repair and hands it over. They ask his permission to restart the phone, which they do after he agrees, and the look of horror on their faces was priceless. For reasons I've never bothered to figure out, the phone saved the gapey picture to some Google profile since it's Android, and when it restarted the picture was set as the wallpaper again. My friend, smaller white guy, gets to stumble over the explanation for the picture when the employee, large black man, hands it back and asks him if that's supposed to be there. I've never laughed so hard. I love it. The time my boss told me his favorite characters were Thor and Wonder Woman. So for his birthday I got him a LARP Thor hammer and a bedazzling blue miniskirt. His wife made him wear the skirt for the rest of the party. About my old best friend, former roommate. He comes rushing home one day. "Dude, guess what?" "Me what?" "Him, I finished reading my first book." He was 23 at the time. "Me, hey man, that's awesome." "What book?" "Him, Harry Potter." "Me, dude, that's a big book. I'm so proud of you." "Him, yay, audiobooks are awesome." "No, but what?" Old best friend, former roommate. It all makes sense now. When I was 10 I won an invention competition where legit scientists made my design, a sheep on wheels, which was essentially a sheep with rollerblade feet wrapped around a jet engine. They chose me over the guy whose invention reduced greenhouse gases, with the third place being a glove with spoons for fingers. This story gets better with each part. I had a good laugh. I was working in the dining hall at school. One day a week, we did midnight chow from 10 PM to 3 AM. I'm making some guy a breakfast burrito, and he's staring at me in a weird way. "Did you go camping at XXX 3 years ago?" he asked. Yeah, I have no idea where he's going with this. UHH. Were you with another guy and 2 girls? Yeah, now I'm a little weirded out. Did you? Did you see a bunch of guys naked? Turns out this dude had been one of a group of guys who had been skinny dipping in the swimming hole. The lookout they had set up saw us, laughed, and didn't tell his friends. We were greeted with the sight of 4 naked dudes running into the woods, and the water was cold. And that's how I made a breakfast burrito for that guy whose dong I saw. How it took my girlfriend until she was in her 20s to wonder why her unmarried parents had the same last name, only to find out that her mum had actually been briefly married to her uncle before getting together with her dad. I feel like there is a larger story here. Myself, my fella and some friends of ours were attending a street festival in a downtown area with lots of tall buildings. There were booths set up along the sidewalks selling all the things they do come fair time. Some of the local businesses had things, think flags, balloons, celebratory gear, attached to their restaurants' businesses. Chipotle, not wanting to be outdone, had an enormous blow-up burrito in front of their store. It was doing a decent impression of a burrito. It was basically a cylinder that was silver, mimicking a finished and wrapped burrito from, you guessed it, Chipotle. It was tethered to the entrance and easily reached to the 4th or 5th floor of this building, fully inflated. Just huge. This particular fair day was a gusty one, and the many tall buildings on either side of the street acted as a wind tunnel, which was lashing this silver monstrosity back and forth. All of a sudden, this giant silver burrito came loose from its upper moorings and started attacking the entire street. It whipped back and forth like a burrito with a vengeance. It had wrongs that must be righted. This thing seemed like it gained consciousness as it knocked people over left and right. Relentless, uncaring, just people of all sorts being absolutely devastated by this out of control silver bat. Most of the people in the red zone had the common sense to stay on the ground, but some kids were whacked repeatedly. Eventually, workers came to wrestle the thing back into the real world. They deflated it, and I haven't seen it since. I will never forget the burrito of doom. It was one of the funniest things I have ever seen. Thank you, burrito of doom, for all the entertainment. No one was hurt to the point that they needed medical attention. Thank goodness. Imagine being incapacitated due to a balloon incident. Legend. That I was basically paralyzed in a hospital bed with Guillain-Barré syndrome and promised myself that if I got over it and recovered I would try to join the Royal Marines. Usually this illness can take up to a year to recover from. I took 6 weeks. 8 months later of hard training I passed Marines selection and got in. 17 of 60 of us made it. This is amazing to hear. My grandma got GBS about 7 years ago and was completely paralyzed for a while. She can walk with the help of a walker now, but I'm assuming she won't be regaining much more movement due to her age. You should be so proud of your achievements. It's a terrible illness to have and I'm glad you were able to push through. Congratulations. A few years ago I had to take a Greyhound bus from Texas to Illinois, so about a day and a half trip. I was sitting down and this guy in his late 40s decided to sit with me. He smelled like donuts. That's fine. Whatever. The first thing he says to me was something along the lines of, I'm sure you'd rather have me sit with you than some of these other weirdos. My name is, insert random name. Okay. So he starts telling me his life story, showing me these random scars he's gotten because he's a welder. Kept telling me I was beautiful, but constantly reassuring me he wasn't hitting on me because he has a daughter about my age, etc. On the second stop, about 4 hours into the trip I was going crazy because he talked non-stop and I didn't have the heart to tell him to be quiet. So I bought a Xanax from a fellow bus passenger and took half of it to fall asleep. As I was trying to relax, the guy offers me his MP3. I said yes because I figured if I'm listening to music, I won't have to listen to him talk anymore. The MP3 was filled with the discography of Nickelback, nothing else. So it was either listen to him talk or listen to Nickelback. I gave it back to him and we eventually parted ways in Tennessee or some other state. I forgot. He tried to hug me and said he was so happy to have met me even though I barely contributed to the conversations. Then he gave me a pack of Newport Reds and I never saw him again. Why is long distance travel full of men who have a daughter about your age and want to tell you how pretty you are and also about their pilot's license? When I was 4, I went to the doctor's for a checkup. The doctor pulled out a stethoscope and said, we're going to listen to your heart. What do you think about that? I proceeded to pull down my pants, showed her my penis, and asked, what do you think about that? I'm on the fence about our that happened and you can't make this crap up. When I was in my younger years, and in the army, I met this girl on Prodigy. For those of you too young to remember, this was the precursor to AOL. For those that don't remember AOL, look it up on altavista.com. At any rate, I was in the barracks and met this girl who claimed to be my age, 18, and in the chat room we hit it off. We had everything in common from our political views to the brand of cigarettes we smoked. I was in upstate New York, she was in North Carolina. We decided to meet, So finally, being young, dumb and full of ready to meet someone new, I made the 12-hour drive on a Friday night to meet her. She warned me just before the meeting that she had an abusive ex-husband that had beaten her so bad that she may be unrecognizable. We'd traded pictures. When I arrived at her trailer, not making this up, it turned out that her ex-husband had beaten her so bad that he beat an additional 150 pounds. And 30 years into her, still being new to the internet and not realizing that this woman had figured out that you could lie on the internet before the internet was a thing. I was confused. Very confused. She didn't smoke my brand of cigarettes, but I still gave it a go. Frick it, I was 18. The phrase throwing a hot dog down a hallway was never more apt. I tried to stomach my way through it, but as the minutes wore on even my 18-year-old brain went, wait a minute. Frick this, and I finally left. As I headed back home late at night, I was speeding down a back road and didn't realize that the railroad warning was less about the tracks coming up as they were about the 45-degree drop past them. I cleared air, going about 80 miles per hour long enough to say out loud, "Oh crap, this is gonna hurt," when the front end of my Grand Am slammed into the road probably 50 feet past the tracks. The struts shot through the hood and the radiator was shattered. I spent the remainder of the weekend driving a few miles to each gas station so I could refill the radiator with water and fill up a few gallon jugs I'd bought along the way to keep putting water in the radiator. I got back to base at 4:50 am on Monday, just in time to go to PT. I hadn't slept in more than 48 hours. $1,200 worth of damage to my car. Easily the worst lay I've ever had in my life. Things that happen at featuring. Drum for 100. Me and my friends were walking to the local grocery store, about maybe half a mile away. We had scrounged up enough change to buy a 2-liter and a bag of chips and were gonna go buy some and come back and play video games. Well, we come across an older man struggling to change his flat tire. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we were strong enough to do it and he told us what to do. He started crying and thanked us. Well, somehow someway we ended up at the same grocery store. We were walking in and he was walking out. He handed us a $100, $5.20s. We were so excited. There were only 4 of us, so we each took a $20 and spent the rest on our snacks. Remember, being kind pays off. I'm unusually prone to having my car stolen. I had an old beat up Jeep Cherokee that had its stereo system burgled, and I never bothered getting the lock repaired because most of the car's value was set for my stereo. Then I had to bore the ignition out, another story, so it could be started with a screwdriver, which I kept in the console. On 3 separate occasions it was stolen, taken on God knows what kind of gangster missions, and abandoned for the cops to find. I got it back all 3 times. Once there were a couple syringes on the floor. Another time there were various Asian restaurant menus and a pretty cool knife with a dragon carved into the handle. Then there was the '88 Cadillac Brougham that, the very night I bought it for $500,000, was stolen while I was in a club and set ablaze, discovered smoldering the next morning in one of the shittiest neighborhoods in the state. Jesus Christ, that is a lot of Grand Theft Auto. The time I bought the last copy of Half-Life 2 in the store, so ever since Dad brought a CD with the game at home, he borrowed it from a friend so it wasn't ours. I was hooked. I was fascinated by everything HL2 related. Problem was I loved it so much I wouldn't stop talking about it, doodling it and so on. Forgot to mention I was 5, so my dad just banned the thing one day from our household. Just like that. Claimed I was obsessed with the game. A while later, when I was 7 or 8, I saw a physical copy in a PC store while shopping around with Dad. The price was good too, so I just begged him to buy it. Fat chance. A week later my uncle comes to visit my grandpa. So the 3 of us, I refer to us as the unholy trinity every time I tell this story, decide to go to the mall where the PC store was, because I had a plan. I would have grandpa buy it and then I would play it on his computer without my parents knowing. Things were so simple when I was 8. Both him and my uncle were down with the idea, so we did just that. We got back from the store and I sat down to install the game, which was when Steam asked for an internet connection. I had no idea what Steam was at that time, and my grandpa didn't have internet. So, being 8 and implicitly a poor liar, my parents found out about it. I had lost the receipt too, by the way, so there was no way I could return it. And then, the impossible happened. Like an ex machina situation, my dad surprisingly caves in, takes the game to our house, installs it, and I get to play it as much as I want from then on. To this day it remains my all-time favorite video game. Amazing game and story. So I was at work one day changing the specials when an old lady enters the store. I turn to her and ask her how I can help her, to which she replies that she was coming to pick up an order that she had placed over the phone. Well, now that posed a problem, because I was the one in charge of answering the phone and I had not had any phone orders. Still, I asked the servers to see if maybe they had answered the phone while I was doing something else. No one had. So I did what I always do in this situation and inform her that we did not have her order and that she likely called the wrong location, and if she remembered the number she called we could point her in the right direction. She did not like that. She began to yell about how she knew this was the right location, how we messed, blah blah blah. It was so bad my manager ran up front to figure out what the problem was. I explained to him what happened, all the while she's still yelling about how ridiculous this whole thing is. My manager tries to smooth things over, but she's still yelling. Then, suddenly, she stops, looks around her and says this isn't the chain restaurant next door, then promptly turns around and leaves. God, I hate stupid customers. Customers are always right, my butt. Some are pretty darn stupid. Well, just today we had a UPS guy walk right into the window next to our office door. The funniest thing is the same exact guy did the same exact thing yesterday. I can't understand how he did it 2 days in a row, but I suspect I'll be telling that story for a while. At my old job I was at Costco with my boss and told him to buy the invisible glass cleaner because it was way better than the crap we ordered it in. He didn't believe me, but bought it anyway. We get back to my store and it has double doors, but I only do one of the doors. We are standing there talking about how what a good job it does when a guy walked into the door. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.